Hello, everyone, and a massive welcome to you all. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We'll get started in just a moment, but first, a couple of quick housekeeping notes. You'll be on mute for the session, but that just keeps the audio clean for everybody. But please, please, please get involved. Leave your cameras on if that's something that you wish to do. And remember, if there is something that mentioned throughout that sparks a question, please drop it straight into the chat box. We've set aside some time at the end for some Q&A, and we'll probably throw to you guys throughout. The best discussions always come from your real world examples, so please do not be shy. We're also recording today's session, so if you need to drop out at any stage, don't stress. We'll send you the recording to absolutely everybody who has registered. Now, for those of you who have not joined us before, my name's Christina from myosh, and I will be your host for today. Today's session is part of the myosh Academy. And for those new to us, the Academy is our open learning initiative for HSEQ professionals. We run regular webinars, publish resources, and bring in some of the best thinkers like Mark in the industry, all to help the community do safer, smarter work. Now, in Australia, there are hundreds of people killed at work every year, and that figure hasn't shifted in 2 decades. We're busier than ever, more investigations, more forms, more closed out actions. So, why isn't it working? Part of the answer is that we investigate everything the same way. When a paper cut and a near fatality get the same process, we overload our teams and we miss the events that actually carry serious risk. Today is all about fixing that. So let me introduce today's presenter. I know he's not a fan of the long-winded fanfare, so I'll make this brief. Mark is the founder of Investigations Differently. He started out as a federal agent with the AFP, spent more than 20 years in risk and safety with the likes of BHP, Rio Tinto, and some of our favourite people at Mitchell Services. He's trained in all the traditional methods like ICAM and the 5 Whys, which is exactly why his message about doing things differently carries so much weight. He's not anti-investigation, he just wants investigations to count, moving past blame and paperwork to learning that genuinely reduces that risk. Today, he's showing us where to start and how we classify events in the first place. I'm going to stop yapping and hand it over to you, Mark. Take it away.
Thanks, Christina. Hopefully we won't get too loose today. So look, welcome everyone. This is actually the first of 4 webinars we're hoping to run in a series. And so obviously we need to start with where do we start? So that's it. And as Christina said, at any stage, jump in, got a question, throw it out there, and we'll answer it if it's at the time, or we'll answer it at the end. But yeah, feel free. And if you want to put your camera on, right? Okay, let's get into it. I posted this on LinkedIn a few years ago, and basically what happened was, it was, and shout out to any Rio Tinto people on the call today. They know it's them. This was an autonomous haul truck accident that happened in the Pilbara, where on night shift, a fitter went out to the breakdown of an autonomous haul truck. For those that don't know, no driver, they're not done by remote control, it's all computer programmed and they run the routes. Anyway, this was broken down, isolated, set off. Anyway, the fitter parked their vehicle in front of the truck on night shift, and then climbed up into the truck and promptly drove over his own vehicle, his own ute. Now, on night shift, there's only one fitter, no one else works with him, there's just by himself. And it's not credible that someone could be with him. I posted on LinkedIn and I said, hey, how would your organisation classify this event? I got like 20,000 views and heaps of comments. It's like the most, I've never had as many views as I've had for this one because I'm up on LinkedIn. So this is some of the things that we got through, right? These are some of the comments that came through when it was sort of like significant incident, high severity, could lead to a fatality, and all these things. But when you look at the story, you look at actually what happened, it wasn't credible anyone could be there. The only person who could have been there was the fitter, was the mechanic. For those that I'm not sure what a fitter is, was the mechanic, and he was in the truck that ran over his own ute. So where's the fatality? Where's the potential fatality? But as my favourite comment in that line there is, significant as an ICAM has to be done no matter. And this is where we are in Australia. We're driven by this silly way of classifying events, which just drives this huge, right? But at the end of the day, it was just property damage. And for Rio, minor property damage, because you probably 150 grand, 180 grand you, for, believe it or not, for Rio Tinto, that's minor, right? Because of the size of their money they've got, right? So it's a surprising outcome, right? It's worth understanding, but it's not worth classifying as a high potential. Is it reportable, right? But at the time, maybe it wasn't, right? There's bit to learn here, but the problem with the classification, when we give it a high potential, we drive this urgency and we drive this quickness to learn, and we end up with these political pressures on our investigations that we don't need. We don't need. So I just think I find this really fascinating about how we classify things. And it started there and then it just sort of snowballed. And I started thinking about things, and there was a couple of events that came across my desk because I deal with heaps of investigations. And this one here is an example. So we've got an operator sending a truck and the handrail failed. They fell about 1.5 meters to the ground, arm and leg fractures. Similar consequences. It was just an operator walking along a platform exactly like that one there. Exactly like that one there. 10 o'clock in the morning, boots were fine, not fatigued, not rushing, simply tripped over their own feet. Within 5 minutes of talking to that person, you knew that's what happened. Under the traditional way of classifying and determining how we do events, both are lost time injuries. Both lost time. And so both get the same treatment, an ICAM or taproot or whatever it might be. The problem is they're not equal. The opportunity for learning, the opportunity for risk reduction is just not there. In fact, the one on the right, what they did was they did the month-long investigation, and for this organisation, it was a taproot. They did the month-long investigation, and at the end of it, the only action, and you'll love this rubbish, was to issue a toolbox talk saying, watch where you're walking. Now, I reckon if your cameras were on, you'd all be shaking your heads and going, yeah, that sounds familiar. Toolbox talks have never fixed a thing in their life. This has got to stop, right? And so the way we normally do these things, the way we allocate incident investigations is off two metrics, or two decision trees. One's actual consequence based through this made up set of definitions. The only definition actually that's got any grounding is lost time and fatality. The rest we just make up. And the second one is, and the issues around this are these broad definitions. As I said, we make them up. The classification seems to be more important than patient care. And how many of you have seen the arguments, oh, just give them two 25 Voltaren instead of a 50 Voltaren because that way it's not medically treated. Statistical manipulation, manipulating the injury classifications, and this sort of thing leads to unreporting and this focus on high frequency, low consequence events. This is the issue we have. And we've all done it, right? We've all been involved in this. And from that, we end up with really poor actions that actually don't achieve anything. We end up with like watch where you're walking campaigns and hand and finger campaigns and all this other nonsense. When reality, when Christina spoke at the start of today, truthful, on average, last 20 years, 200 workplace fatalities every year. Hasn't changed for 20 years. But we're focused on hands and fingers, right? And then we have the old risk matrix way. It's poorly understood. It's poorly used. People think the sky's falling for everything, and it's really not. It just creates more clutter. I was working for an organisation, I won't tell you which large mining company it was. One year at one mine, we had 245 ICAMs in 1 year at one mine. That's what this drives, right? This over bureaucracy, over bureaucracy, and the less said about the risk matrix, the better. Quite happy if you all had organisations that dumped them. That would be awesome. I would love to see that because they had no value. Risk matrices. I should throw some cats in. Right. Why do we do it? Zero harm. That drive for zero harm. That seems to be leaving the industry, but it's feels still its legacy is still there with this drive for metrics. We feel we have this contractor obligation. I must treat contractors as one of our workers, so therefore we'll count their injuries as ours in injuries. You poor organisations that have OSHA, like I feel for you. Like if that drives such underreporting, it's not. I'm not joking. It's ridiculous. Copying what other organisations do. This is how we've already done it. This need to measure. We've got to produce things, or is it a legal regulatory requirement? And I went looking for this a while ago, some time ago. I was like, where is this based on? Where do we get this? And originally there was this workplace injury and disease recording standard. I don't know if people remember it. This is where you get like those drop-down lists, which are probably still legacy in a lot of people's systems, about the mechanism of injury types, the type of injury, like where it was, head, neck, shoulders, back, lower back, all those things came from this. It did have a lost time injury disease definition, but it didn't have anything for first aid, medically treated or restricted. So organisations made them up. I've worked with organisations where we tailor those so they have minimum impact on recordable injury frequency rates because they're made up. The thing is, this doesn't exist anymore. It stopped getting published. So it wasn't removed as such, but it was stopped published like 3 years ago. I think it was in 22. So this doesn't exist anymore. So where are we getting our injury classifications from? We do have the new 45,004, which gives us guidance on how to measure or performance evaluation of these things. No injury definitions in there either. By the way, that's a really interesting read. I don't know if anyone's read this or if some people might not even be aware of this new standard, 45,004. A very confused committee wrote that one. But no injury definitions. Statutory requirements. Well, we have the model work health safety bill. Now we've got, people joining us from all over the country and maybe even overseas today. That has definitions. But it talks about notifiable incidents being death, serious injury, dangerous incident, violent incident. By the way, violent incidents reasonably new, and I'm not sure it's in all jurisdictions yet. And there's other things we've got to notify about people being off time for work for periods of time and psychosocial stuff. So there's stuff coming through, but not in all jurisdictions yet, but just keep an eye for it. But it doesn't provide injury definitions as such. It says like, a serious laceration or a serious head injury or something like that. But what Safe Work Australia did has released this guidebook, this handbook. And it does provide examples of serious injuries and definitions of those, which is useful because we can use that to frame what's not a serious injury, right? But it doesn't provide details about lost time, medical treatment, restricted or first aid. They're not in there. So we're seeing a real lack of formal guidance around here. So it's waiting towards my understanding and the evidence is there that this is made up stuff. Our injury classifications are predominantly made up now. There's no supporting evidence. There's no science behind them. Some of you might have to deal with the Federal Safety Commissioner. They have their report guide, which has definitions in that. So if you've got a contract with them and you're spending any of the federal government's money, you'll have to do that. This is how ridiculous OSHA is. They treat a chipped tooth as a fractured bone. Like, where are we at? The reason I bring this up is we've got to understand where we've been to know where to go. Because how much are your investigations costing you? How much money, time, effort, stress? Like, if you were to look at that psychosocial hazard of job demands versus job resources, what's the impact of investigations for health and safety people? And it's massive because it's always break-in work. And the thing is, are they worth it? Are they worth it? You'd have to argue maybe they're not. Maybe they're not worth it. Are we getting return on investment for our investigations? Because everything we do in safety, everything to do in a business should have a return on investment. If there's no return on investment, why are we doing it? Why are we doing it? We're just doing these things as we normally do, right? Because we've just always done them this way. So if we look at some of the history of safety, right? And this is probably familiar to a few of you, is that back in the 1800s, we had this compliance-based industrial revolution, Taylorism with Frederick Taylor, scientific approach to management. There was legislation, we saw drop in fatalities. 40s and 50s, we saw the golden age of aviation and nuclear. That where the massive advancements made in those spaces. We started to see human factors come in, especially around aviation and nuclear, and we see international standards and a lot more emphasis put on controls. Thanks to people like Reason and Hopkins, we saw, they wrote that paper, the Swiss cheese model on the Swiss cheese model. 80% of accidents caused by human error was part one. Everyone stopped reading because they didn't read part two about those errors being caused by system failures, which is unfortunate because we might have started a bit better. But that 1990s, that focus on with the new legislation that came in, I think we got our first health and safety legislation around 87. We started to look at, okay, we're going to be held accountable for safety. Let's put some metrics in around it, and they came up with recordable injury frequency rates. Behavioural-based safety, focused on the worker. Look, a lot of negative stuff came out of that, but let's be realistic, saw a massive drop in fatalities, and secondly, gave everyone here a job. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have the safety people we have now. We wouldn't have the resourcing we now currently have in safety. So kudos to that, right? So I give credit where credit's due. But last 20 years, as Christina mentioned, on average, we kill around 200 people. I think we did 187 the year before last, I think, because we're still waiting for the new stats. Organisations now are starting to change and they're looking for something different. What do we want to achieve out of safety? And the big movement now is towards systems thinking, becoming learning organisations. So we're seeing things like the application of high reliability organisation theory. So we're seeing things like that. We're seeing the application of human organisation performance, safety differently, safety 1 and 2, new view. We're seeing these things come into industry. And it's a focus on systems thinking and the understanding of what the workers do. So, which leads me to this, because we really need to understand why we even do investigations in the first place. That's crucial because unless we know what our ultimate objective is, then how can we know what process to do, what's going to work? Now, traditionally for years, it's to prevent recurrence. So everyone had in their procedures, every incident must be reported, it must be recorded, it must be investigated, a root cause identified, and action put in to prevent reoccurrence. That's the timeline of an investigation process. Had that for ages. How's that working out for everyone? Probably not that well. And this is the problem, because if I want to prevent reoccurrence, guarantee something doesn't happen again, I have to eliminate it. I have to eliminate the risk. How many of your investigations eliminating risk? So this is an unachievable objective in the main part. It's a unicorn objective. So we have to change. And what learning organisations are doing is they're changing their objective about investigations to learn and reduce risk. Learn and reduce risk. That's what they want to do. So their investigations are a trigger to learn and reduce risk. And that's what we want to do. And when we talk about risk, it's the PCBU's job to manage risk, not the workers. But you can't manage it, you can't reduce it if you don't know about it and you don't understand it. Because that's what risk is. Risk isn't what you know. Risk is the things you don't know. So this is what investigations are about. So it's important. The first step is to be clear on what your objective is. Very clear about what your objective is. We must learn about risk and understand it. Like we have to be certain about it. We've got uncertainty, unsure, unknown, risk. And this is the question I have. Your investigations, how many of them, how would you answer this question? What have we learned that we did not know before the investigation? What is it as an organisation have we learned? Because our investigations must teach us something. If they don't teach us something, then why have we bothered? We haven't learnt anything. Why have we bothered? Let's just record it and move on. And if we already know what the problem is, why haven't we fixed it? So if we know what the problem is already, just fix it. Why have an investigation? Why spend 30 days or whatever your time frame is doing a high level investigation using whatever methodology you use? Why do it? So, I take go back to that event where I talked about the operator walking on the platform and tripping over. And I think, why did they bother? Why did she bother? She fell over, yet hurt herself quite badly, but just tripped over. There was nothing to learn there. Within 5 minutes, you had everything you were going to learn, and they wasted a month's worth of labour of the safety team. And then what was worse is the way I found out about that one is they had a leadership incident review team. So they basically got together 15 senior leaders in this organisation, big money, and spent an hour discussing it. What a waste of resources. Add up the money. Add up the money. How much we wasting on things that don't teach us anything and we don't improve with. So had enough, and probably around 2021, so like 5 years ago, I started working on an alternative. And then in 24, I got together with Yopavinga, who currently works for Powerlink, but at the time was senior lecturer, I think, or a lecturer, or a senior lecturer. I don't want to undersell Yop, he's an amazingly smart man, at Griffith University at the Safety Innovation Lab under Drew Ray and Sydney Decker. And we co-wrote a white paper called the Event Learning Assessment, being smart about what to investigate. So we co-wrote this paper because I had the idea in my head about how to do this alternative, but I also wanted to put some science behind it. Was there someone got a question there,
Yeah, I
Christina?
was going to say, Mark, actually, she has a question about the trip event on the platform.
Yeah.
When they tripped, did they fall off the platform? Is that not what the handrails are meant to specifically prevent? I ask because I know someone who fell less than 1.5 meters and is not permanently severely disabled.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things there. So where there were two incidents I was talking about. The first incident was a handrail failed on a person climbing a truck, and that failed, and that one has organisational learning available. That one's worth investigating. In the second one, which is the operator falling over just on the platform, the handrail was fine. Didn't fall off the platform, just fell straight onto the platform itself. I was just walking on it. It's just a walkway, right? And just fell straight onto the walkway. The handrail didn't play any part in it. And what I'm saying is that one has no organisational learning available. That one wasn't worth investigating. So um, that's with that one. And yeah, look, people have actually had fatalities from falling less than a metre in this country. So, if someone falls a metre, the white paper's available off our website.
I was about to say,
Yeah.
I've just used the QR code on the screen there if everybody else wants to do the same. We'll also send you links to all of the resources that I mentioned, but they are available on their website.
That next question, just if you bear with me, I might answer that. If not, we'll come back to it, Mr. Harvey. But thank you
Okay.
for your question, Steve. By the way, you don't have to put any details in to get that, and it's free. We can give it away. So I came up with this, and basically it's disconnecting from the classification matrix, and it's moving, investigating everything to maximising those learnings opportunities. It's about managing the capacity of an organisation with the resources it has to do it. Very few organisations have dedicated investigation teams. Very few, personally, I think that's the right approach. I don't think you should have a separate one, but that's a different argument for another day. So they're always breaking work. They're always breaking work, even though we could budget for them, but that's another argument. So what do we want to achieve? We want to encourage reflection. We want to give a fairly good, consistent framework that can be applied, right? And land on the most appropriate investigation type. We want investigations at a level where they'll inform future risk reduction. There's a capacity, there needs to be a payoff. So that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to achieve with this. So let's get to it. Like, enough for the warm up. Let's talk about what the process is. So basically, this is a framework. We're working with a couple of our clients now, because this is not black and white. You will do this, 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 and this. This is a guided framework. So you need to make this fit your organisation, because some organisations are going to have different contexts to others. So the first one's fairly simple. And it's still similar to somewhat how we do things, but we're going to not use the risk matrix, because the risk matrix confuses people. First one, was there a credible potential for a critical event? If yes, blue line investigation. Shameless plug. Blue Line Investigations is our investigation methodology. It replaces ICAM, TAPREP, essential factors, that stuff. Whatever you have in your organisation for Blue Line, so be it ICAM or whatever you've got, read it for that. High level investigation. If you want to get into the good stuff, come and see Blue Line. We can talk to you about it. Shameless plug. Right. That's the only plug I do. So, was there credible potential for a critical event? And I'm going to unpack credible potential for a critical event shortly. If yes, we're going to do that high level investigation. If it's yes, that's it. We stop the process. We just go straight there. If it's no, we go to the second question. Is this a notifiable event or a dangerous occurrence and an opportunity for organisational learning? It has to be both, because we will report things to regulators for all sorts of things. All sorts of things. So, I've got a client at the moment, working with them right at the moment. They deliver things to people's home addresses, and so they've got to go through the front gate. And they're a delivery company, and they've had a dog bite from the owner's dog. Now it's ended up in hospital overnight for some surgery on the hand. They missed like 2 days of work. Now, how much can we learn from that as an organisation that we didn't know about dog attacks already? So there has to be organisational learning. Another example is the trip over one that we had with the person that tripped over and had the lost home injury. They had surgery. Admitted as an inpatient to hospital, surgery, notifiable. Where's the learning? It's not there. So we're giving ourselves a chance not to do that. So if it's yes, we do a blue line. If it's got organisational. If it doesn't, we'll do what's called an event insight, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. Actually, I lied. There is a second plug. Was there the absence failure of a critical control? If yes, we'll do a learning team or a blue line. That's dealer's choice, right? So those who don't know learning teams, they're a really effective way, small group workshop of unpacking a cluster of issues, discovering a cluster of risks around a certain task or machine or something like that. So really useful, really useful. Now remember, there's no potential fatality here. We're just missing a critical control. That's all it was, or it didn't work. But no one could have credibly died. If it's no for that, we move down. If it's yes, we stop. Dealer's choice, pick what you want to do. If it's no, we go to this one. Minor, medium harm, and there's an opportunity for organisational learning. We go to an event insight. Again, on that same website, there's another white paper called Event Insights, Making Minor Incidents Matter. I wrote it with Yop around the same time as this one. Have a look at it. We give it away, and it's just a different way of doing things. That's not the silly 5 whys or pre-formatted tick box things. But there must, again, the key thing here, we've had minor, medium harm, but there must be an opportunity to learn, and then we'll do that event insight. The last one, and we are actually going to have webinars later in the series on these couple of processes. The last one's our get out of jail free card. Minor, medium harm, and there's no limited opportunity for organisational learning. We're just going to report it, record it, and not do anything. Not do anything. You must give yourselves permission not to investigate stuff, because not everything's worth investigating. Not everything's worth investigating. Remember, must have return on investment. Must have return on investment. 5 why root cause analysis. Well, it depends how serious they are in your business. 5 whys is down the bottom. 5 whys is designed by Toyota for a production line issue, engineering issue. It's not really good for health and safety. I'd look for more mature ways to do things. RCA, they're all RCA in a way. It just depends on how deep you want to go. And the next question I'm going to answer right now. Credible potential for a critical event. So under normal risk conventions, we talk about worst case scenario. What's the most worst case scenario? But we've got to add must be credible, plausible, reasonable. If I'm walking through a car park and I trip over, my most likely injury is some grazes, bruising, damaged ego. I'm looking for CCTV because I'll be embarrassed, right? Could I die? What else is gonna have to happen? I'm gonna have to hit my head, suffer a subdural hematoma, bleed out before the ambulance got there. Um, I fall in front of a car that just at the time happened to be speeding at the exact same time a car was passing. I fall in front of it. It runs me over with enough force or hits me with enough force to kill me. My favorite one ever was I hit my head on a rock and I drown in a puddle because it's been raining. Are they possible? Yes. Are they credible? No. The credible worst case scenario for me falling over, the credible worst case consequence is probably some sort of medical treatment, a broken wrist or a broken collarbone. So stop adding what ifs into your incidents. It's the potential worst case consequence. What's credible? What could have happened from the circumstances of the event? Don't invent people that weren't there. Don't put them in places they weren't at the time. Don't invent three other things that had to go wrong to get there. Stop playing the what if game. The sky's not falling. You've got enough to do. Pull it back. Pull it back. Why do we want to investigate those high level ones? Because a fatality or a serious event is an organisational failure. That's why we put them at the top. Organisational learning. So this is a cost benefit and discussion you have at the time about what happened. And asking these sort of questions about recent changes, multiple controls, multiple stakeholders, others could learn from it. That's what we're trying to understand. So if we look at recent changes, were they not fully understood? Did the change in routine have knock-on effects? We can identify gaps in change management, communication, all sorts of things. All sorts of things, including things like job demands versus job resources. These should come out. So we're digging into the psychosocial, right? There's some parts there. Multiple controls reveal complexity. How do they interact? We can discover things around control effectiveness, whether there's things around interaction, isolation. Did we not understand how they work together or not? And in fact, that's in the code of practice for managing risks in the workplace. We don't understand how they interact. That's risk. We're looking for risk. And for those in the critical control verification world, there's something in there for us too. Multiple stakeholders. I know today on the call, right, there's going to be people that are contractors or have contractors or are contractors. Who's really in charge? Goal conflicts. Contractors want to make or exceed margin. Clients want to get the job done best they can for as cheap as they can. Resourcing, planning, strategy. These things are all there and can be discovered when we look at these things. This is organisational learning. Can others outside the team learn from them? How widespread across does it always be? Is this task involving multiple people across multiple work groups and multiple sites? Hang on, there's some broad learning we could do here. So these things are a conversation. These questions we're asking are meant to be a conversation. It's not meant to be binary. Is there a return on investment? Is there enough of in here to justify the level of investigation we want to do? And if there's not, don't do it. Don't force it. Don't make it happen. Because someone could argue there's organisational learning in every event, right? Well, maybe there is. But how much is it still got to be return on investment? And that's where how much organisational learning we can get. So someone's got a question about credible potential. You might start with a lower investigation. That's some of that I was talking about here in this. We bespoke it. Sometimes what you'll do is you might start with like an event insight and then that goes, hang on, there's a lot more organisational learning here than we thought. Let's jump up. But at some stage, you have to make this conversation. You have to have this decision, right? And then what we would say is any good system has the Plan, Do, Check, Act. Every 45,000 system has, you must review if your safety system management systems are working. You should have some review of this process at some stage in your organisation's audit review process, and look back at events that were prioritised according to this triage system and go, hang on, did we pick the right one? And if we didn't, maybe we missed out on some learning. Why did we pick the wrong one? So that's one of the things we suggest you do. What's minor, medium harm? That was the second question I got asked before. Well, it's almost easier to answer it in the negative. So firstly, it's got to be decided by your own organisation. So, but for me, I would just make it as easy as possible and base it on the framework and the guidance from Safe Work and do the opposite. So if we've got what serious injury illness definitions are in the model framework, then everything else that's not, wouldn't meet that level, would be a minor or medium harm. That's what I would say. Right. But only for the purposes of applying the event learning assessment, not for your injury classification process. So remember, you might still need to do your injury classifications, right? You might still have this need to collect data on first aids, medically treated, blah, blah, blah. Cool. That belongs for that process. The event learning assessment either just considers a fatality, right? If it's a serious injury or illness, definition is reportable to the regulator. So we've got that covered. If it's not, then it's minor, minor or medium harm. That could be stitches. That could be medication. That could be a broken arm or a broken leg. And the reason why it's not serious injury or illness is because you're going home. You're going home. You're not spending the night in the hospital. And look, that sucks, I know. And I don't mean to come across as hard, but this is what we're talking about, right? This is what we're talking about. Because again, it comes back to capacity for you to do a thorough, good investigation at the most appropriate level. Most appropriate level. We go back to these two: notifiable incident, no learning opportunity, learning opportunity. I know which one I'm going to be doing one on. I know where I'm going to win, right? Now, if old mate on the truck, if that becomes a serious injury illness, we're doing a blue line. If it's just a broken leg or less, or we might even say that's potential credible fatality because he fell 1.5 meters, that'll be a blue line. Simple. So I just thought I'd give a couple more a case study. So we've got an oversized pallet being loaded onto a trailer. It pushes the vehicle, pushes the pallet off, and almost hits the truck driver who's on the other side loading the truck. We apply the process. We ask the first question: was there a credible potential for a critical event? Yep, the pallet could have hit the truck driver. Therefore, it's a blue line. Let's have a look at another one. This time, similar sort of job, but they're up on top of the truck. Basically got up, pushing a pallet around with his hands and fractured 2 fingers. So we go through it again. Credible potential for critical event? No. Was it reportable? No. Any failure, absence of critical controls? No, not for this task. Minor, medium harm? Maybe there's an opportunity for learning. Yep, we stop there. And that's where we'd end up. So hopefully that makes sense. What are the benefits? We focus on learning. Now, I think one of the issues in our industry we have is we talk about learning and becoming learning organisations, but it's not just learning, it's reducing risk. So it focuses on the reduction of risk. Remember what all the legislation tells us. The legislation doesn't even tell us to investigate things. Legislation tells us to manage risk, eliminate or reduce so far as reasonably practical. We've got to be aligned with organisational priorities. Let's not over-investigate everything. So when we do investigate things at the right level, we can put the right amount of effort in, we can afford to, and it gets us where we need to go. Challenges? Your leaders. This is going to create discomfort, right? So to bring them on, you've got to bring them on the journey. and you bring them through risk. Risk is our answer. What is their job? Eliminate or reduce risk. What is risk? Risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. That's straight out of the ISO standard. That's its definition. Uncertainty, the things we don't know, the things we're unsure about, uncertain. That's risk. So explain it through that, right? Moving from traditional change is hard. Organizations hate change. If you're a contractor, what the client wants are different things. Yep, these are differences. How do we measure it? Base it on your risk reduction. Base it on risk reduction, because if you've got more resources available, you should be able to achieve more risk reduction. As Todd Conklin says, right, and for those that don't know Todd, basically, I probably owe my whole business to Todd. It's the difference between fixing the right things the first time or fixing the wrong things aggressively and often. Are you sick of doing toolbox talks? Are you sick of retraining, the shame, blame, retrain outcomes? Are you sick of blaming supervisors? You want to get real results out of real investigations, then we've got to start doing things differently. So it's up to you. Which pill do you want to take?
Both. Jokes.
Both? Wow.
It's
See,
been a
that says
hard
a lot.
week.
Jeez, Christina, that got dark. Um,
Shall we go to some questions?
yeah, out on LinkedIn.
Questions.
Reach out on LinkedIn if you want. Email us, call us, message me, whatever, and I'm happy to get in contact with anyone.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mark. Do you have 5 minutes for some quick
Oh,
questions that we've
yeah, I
got?
purposely left hopefully about 10 minutes for questions.
Amazing. Thank you. So we went through the credible potential question. I'll go now to Sapna, who's asked, are we considering the presence and effectiveness of critical controls of manage and reduce the event's severity? I think
So
this is
that
huge.
so that lends into whether something's credible or not. So I assume you're talking about a credible potential for a critical event. So that were they present and were they effective? So that will lean into whether whether the event is credible or not. So if they're not weren't present and weren't effective, then that event is credible. But this is where critical risk is this is where risk needs to start focusing, because most of our risks are really, really well known. Really well known. What we lie about to ourselves is how effective our controls really are. How effective. So when we look at residual risk ratings in our risk assessments, we go, oh, all this admin stuff will reduce it to green. No, we're just lying to ourselves. Were they present? Were they effective? Were we good or were we lucky? So this is that conversation about whether something's credible or not. So I hope that answers your question, Satna.
One that I think more people than David alone would want to know is, do you have any advice on how to sort of explain this to senior officers or people that have a bit of a reservation, that this is a defensible approach to investigating adverse events?
So this isn't an investigation methodology. This is selecting what you're going to investigate. Like in my experience, when we have a notifiable event and it goes to the regulator, and I deal with all the regulators across the country on some sort of basis. They, if you're in, say, central Queensland and you're in the mining industry, they're expecting a certain type of investigation. But other than that, most industries are pretty free with what you can give them in terms of an investigation. They just want to see you've identified something and you're doing something about it to manage the risk. So where this becomes extremely defensible is because nowhere in the model legislation that's applied across the country does it say what sort of investigation you have to do. Nowhere. But what it does talk about is discovered your reasonably foreseeable risks, so you know what's reasonably foreseeable, and that you're managing. In other words, you're eliminating or reducing and providing a safe workplace. So this is where this becomes extremely defensible. So again, when we're talking to our leaders and your senior officers around their duty of care around providing a safe workplace, eliminating or reducing risk so far, it's all about risk. So let's stop talking to them about other stuff, because an investigation is a risk assessment after a potential event. A risk assessment's an investigation before an event. When we look at what the outcomes are, we call them actions. Actually, they're controls. They're controls. So let's start using more risk language.
One question that's got quite a few thumbs up is from Tony. He said, "Got any ideas about how we can make iCams less iCammy?"
Yeah, cool. Yeah, just stop using it. That's my first advice. Even BHP doesn't want to use it anymore, and they invented it. Um, so what you can do, and we do this with our clients that have to have an ICAM output, like so they have to have the table with the absent failed offences and all that other nonsense. What we do is we still use our 3-tier blue line timeline. So our blue line timeline has work as intended, work as normal, work as happened, and you can do an ICAM on that. And instead of doing just a 5 whys below those, you selectively look at the differences between work as intended, work as normal, and work as done or happened, and you look at the conditions and the context of why those differences exist. Then all you do is identify the issues, and then you just pump them into your book of knowledge, the book of answers, and put them in the appropriate column. So that's how you can make ICAM less ICAMmy. And the other way you can make ICAM less ICAMmy is stop doing the PIPO part of ICAM. Because the first P in PIPO is people. And that's why we see so many blame orientated results out of ICAM.
Ali has said, "As you said, if the cause of the incident is already obvious, we don't necessarily need a full investigation, which can save time and effort. However, according to our procedure, we still need to complete the initial risk assessment first and then determine required in an investigation method. Here, technically, what to do."
Easy, easy answer on this one. So if you look at ISO 31000, which is the risk management standard, for risk assessing anything, first you must identify context. So if I can't risk assess anything unless I identify context. So if it's about an event, I must first have some understanding of the context of the event. So we still need to make some initial inquiries, understand the context of the event, and then we can do the risk assessment, right? So that's if you like applying what Ali's talking about there. But if we really want to do something, change your bloody procedure. Is my advice. It's simple. I can say that because I'm sitting here in lovely Harvey Bay. So I would just advise you to, if you have to understand context first, then you can risk assess it, and then you can. So by identifying context, I need context to work out whether it's a credible, critical, potential event. Otherwise, without context, I can't do that. So
Mm.
you still need to make some initial inquiries, right? You always need to make some inquiries just so you have some basic understanding of context.
And Aaron finally has asked, "Would you use a risk matrix in any part of your company?"
No, I would not, Aaron. I wouldn't. In fact, I'm working with a couple of large organisations now, um, ASX 100 companies that are looking to remove them from safety. Um, there is so many papers been written about their inadequacy. There's no requirement in the code of practice. There's no requirement ISO 31 or 4000. There's no requirement 45,000 to use a risk matrix. They're made up. They have ordinal misuse in terms of like the 5x5. They have no value. Um, when I want to know about risk, I want to understand the context of the risk. I want to make sure I identify credible risk scenarios. I want to make sure I put effective controls in place, and I want to make sure at the end of the day, I've managed that risk to eliminate or so far. That's what I'm after.
That's not to say that everybody should stop using them right now, because you've obviously
Yeah,
got practices in place that see them redundant. But for those
yeah,
that don't, I'm sure there's a place for them until you're able to work in a way that you don't need them.
yeah. And yeah, and Sapna, yep. Shout out to Ian Long. He's the one that he's actually he's the one that introduced me to Todd Conklin's work. Ian's retired now, so yeah, he's the one that started me on this.
Amazing. There are a few things that I wanted to sort of share. I wrote them down. that were really powerful sort of thing when you said them. The first one was, we've got to understand where we have been to know where we go, where to go rather. And I just thought that really hits home, doesn't it? Like, you really need to stop, look to the past, see where you started and why you've got these processes in place, what's not working, and then think differently, like you're exactly what you're talking about. And then you'll have a better idea of how to improve and where to go. So I thought that was amazing takeaway. Another one was that risk isn't what you know, it's what you don't know. And I hope a lot of people take that away and stop playing the what if game. Deal realistically in the moment, in the present. You've got what you've got. And I just thought that was all amazing. So
Mm.
again, any questions that didn't get answered, I'm going to email them through to Mark anyway, and he can have a quick look at them and get in contact with you. Or we can even do a quick FAQ, or a quick question and answer email I can send out to you all. We will also be back in a fortnight's time. So Thursday, 23rd of July, same time. The next session of the series will be event insights. So making minor incidents matter.
There we go.
Why are you
And
laughing at me for that?
well, because I couldn't remember what the next one was, so I've got to write it. So I'm glad you told me, so I'll make a note of that. I do have it written down somewhere. Um,
Sure.
but yeah, so yeah, it's the paper's on the website, and thanks, David, for answering that question around the risk matrices. Excellent episode on Safety Word podcast with Dave Proven and Drew Ray. That
Amazing. So,
looks lovely.
like Mark mentioned, all of the resources that he has mentioned are more than likely on his website. Again, that's going to be on in a fortnight's time, and we're really excited to get in touch with you all and chat further about this. I think this is going to be an incredible series that we're all going to learn a lot from. As always, keep in touch with us all. Like Mark said, he's always around and happy to help. So please reach out to him. So, again, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Awesome having you today. Great crowd, by the way. Great
It
questions.
wasn't it? All right, we'll
Fantastic.
chat soon.
One of the
See you
best.
guys.